Hello everyone, and we're going to be doing our next post today. It's post 99 and Learn the Bible. It's going to be read Exodus chapter 17 verse 1 to 7, and this is going to be titled Thankless Thirst. So Israel had all kinds of food. They had the manna. They were being provided for. They had been traveling through the desert, and now God himself, was taking care of their every need. He had already led them to a place where there was bitter water that made the water sweet. He had led them to 12 wells of water with 70 palm trees. He had led them and gotten them food. So by this point, surely the people of Israel would be learning to depend on him. He was with them all the time in a cloud of fire. He had done pretty much everything. But unfortunately, they were traveling and their water skins started to run dry as they approached this place called Rephidim. So these people failed to recognize that it was actually God leading them. That means everywhere they went where there wasn't food and there wasn't water, he led them there. Why would he lead them there? Because he wants to provide for them. He wants to give them what they need so they know they can trust him. So the question for us today, of course, is if you're a child of God, if you've been saved by the blood of Christ, and you follow where Jesus leads, do you trust him when things seem really dry? Do you trust him when you run into problems or issues? Do you look for his provision? Or do you kind of act like Israel and you don't really let your history affect your future behavior? So that's what happened with Israel. They began to fight with Moses, saying, "How could you bring us out here? Oh my gosh, we're going to be thirsty. We're all going to die, all of our animals." And he doesn't even bother to answer the people. I mean, this has kind of become status quo, unfortunately. So again, Moses says, he goes to God, and he takes the matter to God and says, "What do you want me to do for these people?" Well, God gives Moses a miraculous answer, as he always has. And he says, "I want you to get all the elders of the people, and I want you to take your rod." Now, this is a big difference because later on, they're going to come back to this rock. And Moses' rod was always used for judgment. It was always used when they crossed the Red Sea, used against Egypt. And then you're going to find Aaron's rod used in the next situation. But we'll talk about that in a few posts. So he says, Moses, take your rod, the one that you split the sea with, and I want you to go and stand up there, and I'm going to go stand on this rock before you. So God actually tells Moses, I'm going to stand on the rock, and I want you to strike the rock. Pretty odd, but Moses, of course, listens, and he says the water's going to spring forth from this rock that you strike, and people will drink. And because Israel tested God, they actually named the place Mesa, which means trial or testing, because the people, despite all the evidence, they continued to want to know, is God truly with us? So Israel had failed in their faith with God. And God, despite all this, promised once again that he's going to provide for them regardless. Even when we fail, he provides for us regardless, whether it be through the manna, whether it be through the water. So here we see that, they're in a dry and thirsty land. And again, the water that's gushing is God providing for them. He is the source of living water. He gives us salvation, tells us how we're saved, and then we can tell others. So we actually become the source of living water by telling others about Jesus. Now, of course, it's only Jesus that saves, but he allows us to be the vessel that reaches others. And I think that's a great honor and a huge responsibility. So more specifically, we see that Jesus himself not only is symbolically the rock, he's actually the rock. Whenever you get to the book of 1 Corinthians, you'll find that Paul explains that Egypt was essentially representative of Israel being imprisoned by sin. Then they were let out of Egypt. They were saved. After they were saved, they were baptized. How were they baptized? By going down into the Red Sea and coming up again. What did they do once they were saved and then baptized? They ate spiritual food, manna. They drank spiritual drink, the water from the rock. What is our spiritual food and drink? Of course, that's Jesus Christ. We take communion. We have the bread and the wine. And then they had drank, of course, from this rock. And then Paul makes it clear that that rock is Christ. And that's in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5. But in order to become that source of life, what had to happen to that rock? It had to be struck down. God literally tells Moses, I want you to strike me. God says, I'm going to go stand on the rock, and I want you to strike the rock. Well, that's a pretty peculiar choice of words, unless you're saying, I need to be stricken and smitten for you to be saved. And that's exactly what Isaiah 53, 4 and 5 says. It says he was afflicted of men, stricken, smitten by God, smitten of God, wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities. That's what Jesus Christ did for you. He took the hit so that you could be saved. So, who is this rock? Well, the Bible in the New Testament tells us he is the chief cornerstone. The people rejected him. He was rejected of men, but he's become the chief cornerstone. So, he's the basis of our entire salvation. Faith in Jesus Christ is what gets you saved. And the Bible tells us that whoever falls on that stone will be broken. That means you have a broken spirit, an understanding of your sin, a desire for forgiveness where you can ask God. But whoever the stone falls on will be crushed to powder. So he died for you. You accept him, he becomes your firm foundation. You reject him, he's going to be your judge. And when he's your judge, you'll be found guilty. So when Jesus was stricken, he became a fountain of salvation. And what is the living water? That's the Holy Spirit. When you accept Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit enters you, and you will eternally be saved. You'll be sealed by the Holy Spirit. Don't die thirsty. Be sure that you're saved. Be sure that you're sealed by the Holy Spirit. It's a free gift. He took the hit. He took the strike. He died for you. So accept him today, and then share the news with others, and get that living water out to anyone you know, anyone that you ever cared about. So last thing I'll say, look at the pictures below. You're going to notice there's this rock that I have a picture of, and it's split down the middle on the top of a mountain, or on the top of a hilltop more like it, but it's split down the middle, and then there's one zoomed in picture that you're going to notice. There's erosion marks, and this rock is right on the way of the path of Israel. Nobody knows for sure, but it would sure seem that this rock had a very powerful stream of water that surged from its center when that rock split. So anyways, it's worth looking at and worth considering that maybe that's the actual rock of Moses, which is pretty cool to think about. But anyways, we'll talk more later. God bless you. If you have any questions or comments, please put them below, and we'll see you next time. Have a good night.